Welcome to another episode of War Hero to Superhero, transforming military, veteran, and first responders from the bedroom to the boardroom. I am one of your hosts, Daniel Faust, and thank you for either watching on Facebook, YouTube, Periscope, or on our new stream, The Easy Way Wall, where you can go over and make your digital entertainment the easy way. So, again, we are in the bedroom this week, and our topic is transformation. And we wanted to bring a topic that maybe you're uncomfortable with, but we want to take that taboo and go over and break it. Because stress, lack of romance, and divorce can be symptoms of the topic of money. So, we brought money into the bedroom because it impacts you in one way or another. As military, every 1st and the 15th, you're thinking about money. If you're a GS employee, today's the day. We get paid every other Thursday. If you're a first responder, I'm not strong on your pay cycles, but every time that you have a pay cycle, that these types of things can go bring it in. But we don't want you to have that stress, lack of romance, and divorce to go over and be talked the topic of money. So we want to ask you this question: why is it so taboo? The thing is that, we want money. We love going over and making money. We love going over and spending money. But talking about it, it's awkward. Why is that? Do you know why taboos are awkward? It's because we don't go over and talk about them. So, how do you break a taboo? You break a taboo is once you embrace the conversation. So, tonight, we're going to go over and visit that conversation. So, let's feel a little awkward tonight so then we can feel comfortable on the days on forward and break this taboo that makes the bedroom go over and feel so weird. So let's go talk about it. So I'm going to go present some questions that maybe you haven't wrestled with yourself, with your spouse, and overall your couple livelihood. So let's go jump into them. And I'd love to go over and to join the conversation and answer those questions that are in the comments. I'd love to go hear your engagement. Love to hear how you go over and deal with money. And do you think it's taboo? Do you not think it's taboo? We'd love for you to go over and engage, no matter if you're coming from Facebook to the Easy Way Wall. And at the end, there might be some money to go over and win if you were watching my Facebook post. All right. So our first question that we want to go over and wrestle with is, are you a saver or a spender? That's one of the first things that goes over and drives a wedge in marriage, is that if you have a person that is a high saver and a person that's a high spender. So when the first comes in, are you going over and paying all the bills and putting money in your 401k and mutual funds and emergency savings and things of that nature? Or are you going over on the first of the month, going over and seeing what you can go over and buy and what you can go over and do and what restaurants you can go to and what vacation you can go to and what event or what movie or what video game or whatever you spend your money on? So where do you go sit in your marriage? Do you sit as a saver or do you sit as a spender? That's the first topic. So if you don't go over and know where you're at, I would highly recommend you to go look for and have a conversation and just ask yourself the question. Today's the 1st or today's the 15th. If you're a GS employee, today is payday. Where did you go put your money? Where was the first thing you went over and did with it? What was the first plan that you go over and had with it? Do you even have a plan or a budget, or are you just a swiper? One's not good, one's not bad. It's when you don't go over and talk and know which one that you are, and then you don't go over and visit one or the other. The saver is not better than the spender, and the spender is not better than the saver. It depends on where the person is saving and where the spender is going over and spending. So that's the first one. Next question is, how do you view money? And viewing money can come from many different ways. Do you think it's a good thing? Do you think it's a bad thing? Do you think it's a sinful thing or a negative thing? Do you think of it as positive? Do you get stressed when the words budget comes up, or savings, or credit card, or loans, or debt? Any of those words come over. How do you view those things? Do you view them in a positive way? Do you view them in a negative way? Do you get anxiety? Do you get stressed out? Do you get overwhelmed? Do you get excited to go over and do that? It's a totally different perspective. If you're a credit card bureau and that's your job and you come home, You might think interest is great because you're getting paid and your bills are getting paid by going over and getting a credit card. But if you're the person that got destroyed by credit cards, you might have a different view on money and say debt is totally evil. You know, people like Grant Cardone goes over and leverages debt. Other people don't go leverage debt. So where do you go view money? Is it a positive thing? Is it a negative thing? Where does it go over and bring in your marriage? Going from there, how is money discussed at home? And I'm not talking about now in the bedroom with your spouse. I'm talking about in the past when you went over and you were a kid. So were your family big spenders and everything was, let's say, positive? Or were they big spenders and everything was negative? Were they very restrictive and gifts didn't go over and happen? And they're very tight fisted and tight wadded and they didn't go over and spend? Or did they constantly go over and spend and then you saw the debt go over and destroy them? And then they were living, let's say, on food stamps or living on, unemployment or welfare in that regard. And none of those things are good and none of those things are bad. It's how it's going over and used. So a person that's on unemployment can go use and leverage it as a good thing. They can use food stamps and WIC to go over and get themselves off on their feet to then become that, millionaire and billionaire. Damon John, for example, was a person that was, homeless, struggling. Mark Cuban was on mustard and ketchup sandwiches and those type of thing. And they leveraged money over time to make millions and billions. Other people like myself have gone over and used unemployment to in between gap to go over and get to the next job. I've been on WIC. I've been on food stamps, and the thing is it was never a really negative connotation. But for my wife, it was a totally different connotation. So where did it go over and come from? How was money discussed at home? Good, bad, or indifferent? Now, overall, do you have a negative or a positive association with money? So when you get your paycheck or when a bill comes in or when someone asks for money or someone goes over and gives money, do you have a negative or positive association with overall money? Do you kind of like avoid it? Like you dread the day that you go over and get paid, you do the budget, you go get paid, and then everything else is fine. Or vice versa, that you get really excited when anytime money is in. Do you remember the old days when we used to get birthday cards and shake them out to go over and find the money? Did you have a really positive association with money, or did you go over and have a negative association with it because you never had it, because you always were lacking? So where did you go over and sit in there? Going from there, also for overall growth, we're all in COVID right now, and 78% of Americans are living paycheck to paycheck, and the other 22% are not. And a $400 bill can go over and destroy yourself. And now it can be scary to go over and think, but what do you think about money salary-wise where you want to be in 5 years, 10 years, 20 years? Are you trying to go over and to increase that? Do you think you're going to be the same? Are you scared to go over and ask your boss for the raise or go for the next promotion because jumping up to that next fiscal plane might be scary? We hear a lot of times, sometimes when people go and become rich too fast and too quick, they go over and destroy themselves. But what about if you get a new opportunity for your next job and your next position? Do you move based on the salary? Do you move based on the position? Would you be scared going from $60,000 to $250,000 in a 5-year period? Would you be scared to go over and jump from 80,000 to $500,000 or $1 million? Where do you see yourself in that realm? Because where you see yourself at is where you value money. If you can't see yourself, like let's say you're at 30,000, you can't see yourself at $60,000. You might have a negative association with money, and that will impact the marriage, because if someone else doesn't in the marriage, you could go over and limit lots of opportunities. So where do you see yourself? That's a huge thing to go over and wrestle with, especially in the longevity of marriage and where you want to be. They say the average person that retires in the next 10 to 20 years, you will have to have a net worth of $5 million. Do you think $60,000 is going to cut it if you're at that same point 20 years from now? You'll have to do the math. You'll have to see. Also, one of the biggest ones that I've gone over and seen, especially with military and veterans and entrepreneurs, is where do you stand in overall money in your entrepreneurial growth? Are you just looking to go over and be an E, which is employee, your S, which is self-employed, B is in business owner, or I is an investor? And it's a mindset thing too. And I'll give you a story. So I used to work with somebody far removed a long time ago, and I got to know them in the military world, and they wanted to go from this position in a job to another position in a job. I was education and training. And they went over, and I went over and found out over time that on the military side, they were like E4, E5. And I'm thinking to myself, like, those types of conversations, Robert Kiyosaki is not going to go over and happen. But somehow it did. I found out that they were an investor. But the thing was, is that the person also wanted to go have a job. And I had the conversation with them, and I said, you live in the investor world fiscally, but you live as an employee mentally, because they thought they had to have a job to go get to the next place, because they could do whatever they wanted. So you can even sometimes in your marriage have the money of an investor, but if you live as an employee, you might be severely hampering your bedroom operations within your marriage to go and do that. Or vice versa, that if you live the employee mentality and your spouse is wanting to be a self-employee, you might have rifts in the bedroom, and it might be scary to go over and do that, because each stage has its pros and has its cons. Again, one's not good, one's not bad. They're both different. The gentleman that wanted to be an investor and then also was an employee at the same time, there was pros of being an investor mentality. There was pros of being an employee mentality. But usually you can't live in both spaces, because then they'll go over and contradict. So where do you stand individually in the bedroom, but also corporately in the bedroom? Are you both ready to go chase that next step? That can cause a lot of stress in marriages, especially if you're a vetpreneur. I've seen marriages get destroyed because the veteran goes over and starts the entrepreneurial track, but the spouse was so used to the military track and the employee track. And you jump into self-employee or business owner, that's huge. There's a lot of responsibilities. There's a lot of money that when it comes to bigger money, it becomes to bigger debt. So where do you stand in there as a husband and as a wife to go over and do that? Or even if you're not married, as a cohabitating couple, because in a sense, you're living out a married couple life. So where do you stand on that? Those are questions to go over and to wrestle with. Another type of thing to go over and to talk about to get comfortable in this taboo is, what are you looking for more overall? Are you looking for security, or are you looking for satisfaction in life? A lot of times you really can't have both. That is diametrically opposed. There is unique situations, there are, but a lot of times there's not. Like, for example, the IT world is very stable, but the speaking podcasting world, it can become stable. But when you first start out, like what I go over and do, being on television, being on podcasting, being on Facebook Lives, going putting myself out there to go help people, doing consulting, it's not secure. You have good months and you have bad months. We do a great talk, and you can have hundreds of people come in knocking at your door. Then you go over and 2-3 months wear off. And if you have nothing else scheduled, especially for a lot of my speakers and trainers and entrepreneurs that were more service-based oriented stuff, their security went out rather quickly. So where do you see yourself in the marriage and as a couple? Do you want to look for security and do what I did for 5 years and go over and do, for 5 years, I went back and did the jobs. But then you even have to wrestle with that. It might be secure for the moment, but is it secure long term? Or are you looking for more satisfaction in life, satisfaction in work, satisfaction in your next mission, in your next calling? Because fiscally, it's going to go and look different. Some are going to have, in the long term, you'll make more money in the satisfaction of life. But what about that in between time? That's huge. Also, another thing to go over and wrestle with is that, do you rent or do you own? It doesn't just only affect you fiscally, it also affects you where you live socially, where you live practically with people, what type of people that you're going to be connected with mindset and whatnot. Renters think differently than owners do. You go look at Grant Cardone. He goes over and owns a lot, but he rents out the property. What about yourself? Do you want to be that renter? that goes over and lives. Renters typically get kicked out because we have millions of them that are in there in this moratorium. As a renter in an apartment complex, as I've been there, I've been almost homeless. Literally, renter goes from month to month. Rent goes over, increases every year. It goes over and does give you the flexibility not to stay in the same spot. But literally, if you miss rent within a couple of days, you start getting fees, you start getting fines, you start going over, and you could be out. Before pre-COVID, you could be out within like 30 days after you missed rent. You own, average, if you are owning in the sense of mortgaging, you got at least 4 to 60 months as a veteran to go over and to deal. There was a lot more protections. There was a lot more of those types of things. But at the same time, there's a lot of responsibilities fiscally now owning in that particular regard. So where do you go sit in that regard? Do you sit as a couple, or maybe as individuals? Maybe one of you sits in rent, and one sits and own. That's going to make some lifelong decisions, because when you start owning, it's the biggest, unless you start a business, one of the biggest financial decisions you'll ever go over and make as a couple. So where do you sit? Do you sit in rent versus own? Also, do you look at the mindset of savings, that it's important to you to go over and grow, or do you want to live the paycheck living? And that kind of goes over and goes back to what you learned when you grew up. Savings is behavioral, but it's also personality at the same stop. I know for me, I was naturally a paycheck living person. I've had to learn to break that cycle and start putting savings in that particular regard. So where do you go over and sit in that realm? Is it paycheck? Is it savings? Paycheck living, and going from there, the last question we have for you to go over and wrestle in the bedroom is budget versus just spend. Now, there's great apps of like everydollar.com that goes over from Dave Ramsey, and several other apps you can go over and download, Quickie, and those types of things. But where do you go over and sit at? Do you sit at budget? Like, budget's important for you to go over and know and where your money goes over and goes? Or are you just a spender and then you hope to have the money at the end of the month? Some months work good, some months work bad with just spenders. Also, a person that goes over and budgets, they're typically more safe. But the thing is they're a lot more fun. Do they go over and budget fun in their budget? Spenders usually don't have a problem with fun. They just go and they do amazing things. But in budgeters, typically can go over and not spend as much because they're more concerned about the future. So do you look at money for just the present, or do you look at money in the future? Where do you go sit in that? Now, you're probably asking yourself, why is this all important in the bedroom? It's already taboo going over and talking about it. There's really no point. I'm going to show you a point, and I'm going to bring my marriage on the forefront. So again, I've told the story before, I got married in 2006, and my family upbringing was, you never saw the budget. Finances were taboo. You couldn't ask how much people earned. Checkbooks, I saw my dad checkbooks, but because I went in the room and I explored, it wasn't one of those things that my dad walked me through a checkbook and everything else. So for me, when I got money as a kid, I just spent and just spent and spent. I'd go over and earn money. It was like water vapor. It would just go through my hands and whatnot. So I would be the mindset of like, I can live paycheck to paycheck. I went over and when I overspent or got to low money, I would go over and live like a pauper for that time. And when you get paid week to week, and when you're a kid at home making $150 to $350 a week, that was a lot of money back in the day. And it is now, even for a kid, because I was a young 16-year-old when I got my first job, money just went like vapor. Bills, would be paid if it became cumbersome. If it became a need to me, it would be paid. But if it was a want or a desire, it wouldn't go. So I got into active duty, and now I'm bringing in, I think it was like $600, $700, $800 a paycheck, and they're paying for my food and they're paying for my electricity. And what did I go over and do? I make more money. What did I go and do with it? I spent it. I really didn't have nothing to show for it. And for me, never learned about credit cards. So I bounced and got credit cards, and I bounced more checks than basketball players bounce the ball in the NBA. I was like, whoosh, whoosh. I bounced a quarter one time for 29 bucks. Not proud of it. But if it was for numbers and it was counted as three throws, I would have been like the master at the three throw game. So I go over. It's only affecting me at the time. So I deal with it in the moment. I pay my bounce fee. Another check comes in. I'm positive again. All right, I'm not going to go do this again. I get the bug of spending. I go over and do that. I go over and then I finally start dating. Well, dating's fantastic for me because I'm the spender. So I take my soon-to-be wife to many different places, and I'll go do things and plan things on the weekend and all those types of things, and go to the experiences and go to the casino and all these other types of things. And even when I was in Germany, I went to the Netherlands one time and I paid for 20 people's meals. I'm naturally a spender. I like to go over and do that. But in 2006, when I went over and got married, that spending got out of control. And the funny part is there was no credit cards. It literally was, I knew my numbers. I can do numbers in my head and I can figure out a budget. But the thing was, is my heart was messed up and I would just keep doing things and I'd figure out the small math problem, but not the big math problem. You ever get those math problems in school that are a couple sentences long and they have several different steps? I could figure out the first step, I could figure out the second step and the third step, but I never cumulatively went over and did that in the budget. So I would say, oh, I'm fine at this $50 bill and I'm fine with this $50 bill, but if I only have $100 in there and I'm worried about food, yeah, 50 and 50 I can go over and afford, but I didn't do 50 plus 50 was 100, and oh yeah, I have food for another 100. I never starved myself, but that's the way I did my budget, is I would figure in the moment, but I wouldn't long-term longevity think. It was fortunate I was active duty, but I was red a lot of times in the paycheck. And my wife was the saver. My wife grew up with people that lived on, food stamps and those types of things. Part mindset, part choice, and I'm not condemning anybody that's on those systems, but they were the negative connotation of those systems. They never got themselves out of there. So my wife had to learn how to go save, scrimp, scrimp, scrimp. And every dollar went over and counted, and I'm not going to spend it unless I absolutely have to. And I'm in fearful and regret, and I really don't do anything that's fun unless somebody blesses me on the random. So she comes to me and she's like, this person is just spending and money and everything else, and he has so much. And then I start going red, paycheck after paycheck. I must have did this for about the first year or so. I was doing paycheck to paycheck red. And I was getting paid. I was staff sergeant, active duty, E5, getting about 24, 23, 2,400 a paycheck. Now being married, and I'm blowing that thing out like nothing because I'm doing so many experiential things. And I could do the simple math of saying, I got 1,500 today in the checking account, and it's 400 and it's 1,100, and I'm fine. But I'm not calculating that next thing coming out or that coming out on the 15th or whatever. And I would bounce fiscally, getting those fees. And then I started chasing what we used to be able to, those payday loans. Did those a couple times. I eventually had to get a clue because I was emotionally destroying my wife. It wasn't the spending part of my personality style that was bad. It was the extremity of that. But then it also came a caveat in the same way that my wife would go over and save. And when we finally started doing well, it was like, I don't know if I want to do that. I want to keep go pushing and everything else. I really don't want to do anything. And when we gave her control, she was able to do a budget super, super well, but she never took care of herself. Wait until the last minute to go to the doctors, and now someone's getting serious, and that costs more. It doesn't matter how much you scrimp and save. So both of us were on the extreme. Like I was the swiper, and she was no swiper. I was swiper, and she was like no swiper. Hopefully you understood that reference. So I continued to go over and do that. It took me, because I was the one best at math, even though she does great in a sense of savings, but it was out of fear. So I had to really step up my game and say, and acknowledge myself that I'm a spender. I didn't get taught these things on budget and all those other things, rent, own, and everything else. But the thing is that I had to go over and say, do I want to go over and do paycheck living, or do I want to do savings? I have an entrepreneurial spirit and I want to have satisfaction in life and what I'm doing my calling. but how do I go over and bring security to that? And so on and so forth. Thoughts that I thought I would never go over and do, I had to go transform to go over and do so I can have a thriving marriage, because we know that finances, we know that money can go over and destroy a marriage. But what really goes over and destroys a marriage in depthly is not the finances and not the person that's the spender and the person that's the saver. It's the communication. It's the taboo-ness of not dealing with it, because it will go over and affect. I didn't have to tell her that we were red, but when she tried to go do something, she would find out. So now I had to be vulnerable. I had to go over and start daily. It used to be weekly. It used to be monthly and then every 2 weeks and whatnot. But now, with being an art during the day, and then being a entrepreneur during the nights and weekends to go over and serve you guys, I do my budget daily, every day. I don't have an official checkbook and I don't use checks, but every day I'm writing that sticky, and then I'm going over and comparing, and then I'm going over, and even before I go out, I go and do that. Am I naturally a saver? Oh, hell no. It didn't change. It's not like I became a saver because I wanted to. I wanted to be a saver because I wanted to go have my marriage to go over and thrive. I wanted to have opportunities to go over and serve you guys. I wanted to be an outpouring in a witness so you guys can learn from my mistakes. So you learn and live, and then you transform from that war hero to superhero. Because a lot of us in the military didn't learn that stuff, or we got classes in the moment. So I wanted to share this to say, I'm not the financial guru. I don't have everything going on set. It's not like I have multi-million dollars yet going over there. But even if I do, I will never be the super financial expert. But I will be the expert of going over and talking about it in my marriage. So when we make financial decisions, it breathes life into the marriage, not death. So with that said, and sharing my story, we're going to go to the comments real quick, and then we'll go to our superhero challenge. And if you actually watched our Facebook, you might be able to bring some money into the household. So payday loans are nasty. You are right, Eleanor. It doesn't matter if in the United States or where you're at in Australia, payday loans are nasty. So there is a time, and again, this would be an individual consultative basis. It's very rare to go over and use those things. Again, extreme measures, one time only. You know that you have it budgeted for the next one, and it's something extreme that you had to go over and pay, and no one had access. I did learn that. Now, they block them now for military just because of predatory loans, and there's other options. But at least before they did that, once I started learning the lessons, I'm like, okay, I have an extreme bill that the interest was higher than what it was, or hey, I don't want electricity off, and I know I have a paycheck with a leave-in earnings statement or an invoice being paid. But 95% of the time, you're right, Eleanor, it is a nasty, nasty way to go. So if you have options to do them, be wise in that, get wise counsel. So from there, our superhero challenge is this. As you're looking into this bedroom right now, and you're going to either end the day in the next couple hours or several hours, or depending if you're in Australia, you're starting your day. Ask a creative question to learn about your spouse's financial DNA. And I'm not talking about just going over and saying, like, do you budget or do you save? I want you to be creative with it, to go over and say, like, you'd be like, hey, honey, I was just wondering, if you had $1 million, what would you go over and do with it? You'll find out if they are a budgeter or a spender in that particular regard, saying, like, hey, Christmas is coming up. What do you think about going over and doing? If they're making more at-home stuff, and they're like, hey, let's keep it small and low key, then you might find out they're more of a saver. Or someone's like, yeah, I want to go to a log cabin. I want to go do these extravagant things. And, you're only making $30,000, but they're thinking that luxury high-end stuff, then they're probably naturally a spender. And when you think of those creative questions to learn your spouse's financial DNA, you can then start having the more difficult questions to go over and ask in those things. What legacy questions to go over and ask. Now, if you're going over and listen to us, we'd love for you to go take that superhero challenge. Go tell us on Facebook when you go over and do. We love to hear the comments. We love to hear the shares. If you're struggling in this part of the bedroom or in the overall bedroom, we'd love for you to go over and connect with us. We give 20 minutes free to every military veteran and first responder. And then also, if you want to take your marriage to the next level and become that marriage superhero, as low as $5 a month, you can go over and you can cancel anytime. So no matter if you're a saver or a spender, you can go over and take your marriage to the next level and become that marriage superhero. Now, if you're watching, you probably waited till the end for the Facebook challenge that we went over and did. So here's the caveat. No matter if you're a saver or a spender, we always love to go over and earn more money. So our Facebook challenge is this. We will give one of you a $25 Visa gift card entry by sharing this episode. I went over and put a video about my cat yesterday playing, and she didn't play. And I went over and saw the video that I did the other day, and I'm like talking about sex. You'd think I would have got more views for that on sex than cats, but cats got more views. And I'm glad you love my cat. And that's great that somebody went over and shared it. But I want transformation in your life. If my cat's transforming your life and you get the messages, fine. We'll put the cat in the video. But the goal is for us to go over and do that. So I wanted to go and put a little money where my mouth is, no matter if you're a spender or saver, and I will give one of you a $25 Visa gift card. But it's got to be 100 shares within 24 hours. So by 1900. So if you're not military and you're seeing this and you want to share this with your military buddies, it is 7 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, 4 p.m. Pacific Standard Time. And if you're my friend in Australia, 7 p.m. Eastern Standard Time is 9 a.m. Australian Eastern Time. That's where Eleanor was in the comments. So no matter where you're at in Australia, no matter if you're in the East Coast, West Coast, or you're listening overseas and whatnot, basically 24 hours from now, if we get 100 shares, I will go look at the share list as long as your name is publicized, because if it's not, I can't choose random from you. Then I will go draw a share winner. Now, if you see your name not popularized and you say, hey, it's some glitch, just go put shared in there. And as long as I see 100 shares. Now, if I see 300 people put shares and there's only 100, yeah, we're going to go reevaluate. But we love to go over and to bless you, no matter if you're a saver or a spender in the bedroom, a $25 Visa gift card. But again, it's got to be 100 shares within 24 hours by 1900. Please don't share my cat video 100 times. If she's that good and popular, she should have jumped a lot more yesterday. But our goal and our heart is to go over and to take your lives from military veteran first responder as the war hero and transform it from the superhero. So we'd love for you to go over and share, and we'll give a $25 Visa gift card. I might up it up if you get it done before 1900, but $25 is the minimum. So I want to thank you guys all for joining. No matter where you're coming from East Coast, West Coast, or even Australia now, it's great to start having that representation where we're at. And we thank you for your time, and we hope to go over and connect with you soon. So let money be in the bedroom. It's a good thing. All right. Bye.